17 inches, the morning. March 14th, 1963. Robert Kenneth Marsh was feeding corn stalks into a John Deere Model 33 forage harvester on his 240-acre farm outside Shelbyville, Illinois. The auger caught his sleeve. It pulled his right arm into the intake housing in less than 2 seconds. The machine severed his arm 4 inches below the shoulder. Marsh bled out before the ambulance arrived. He was 41 years old. He owed $8,200 on the harvester. His widow, Catherine, and their 4 children lost the farm 11 months later. The component that pulled Robert Marsh to his death was a rotating auger mechanism that John Deere's own internal safety engineering team had flagged as a critical amputation hazard in a memo dated September 1962. That memo recommended immediate design changes. The auger stayed in production unchanged until 1979. Robert Marsh died 6 months after the recommendation was filed. Before you think this is about one company making one mistake, understand what the agricultural equipment industry looked like in 1962. International Harvester sold 14,200 forage harvesters that year. New Holland moved 9,800 units. Alice Chalmers shipped 4,100. John Deere sold 11,900 forage harvesters in 1962 alone, with the Model 33 and Model 34 representing their highest volume machines. Every single one of those manufacturers used exposed rotating auger mechanisms to feed crop material into the cutting chamber. The engineering principle was identical across brands. Rotating flighting conveyed material forward. The faster it rotated, the higher the throughput. Higher throughput meant faster harvest. Faster harvest meant the machine paid for itself quicker. Sales literature emphasized capacity measured in tons per hour. John Deere advertised the Model 33 as capable of processing 18 tons of silage per hour under optimal conditions. International Harvester claimed 22 tons per hour on their Model 350. Nobody mentioned what happened when fabric touched moving flighting. The mechanism of injury was predictable and followed the same pattern across every documented case. The auger rotated at between 340 and 380 revolutions per minute depending on power takeoff speed. The flighting consisted of a continuous helical blade welded to a central shaft. The pitch of the flighting was 8 inches. That meant every complete rotation pulled material forward 8 inches. When fabric contacted the flighting, it wrapped around the shaft. The wrapping action created tension that pulled more fabric into contact with the rotating surface. Once wrapped, the fabric pulled whatever was attached to it toward the intake housing. The housing clearance on the Model 33 was 4.2 inches at the narrowest point. A human arm measured between 3 and 4 inches in diameter. The mathematics were simple. If fabric wrapped and pulled an arm into contact with the flighting before the operator could disengage power, the arm entered the housing. Once inside, the cutting blades severed whatever entered. Operators worked alone. That was not a choice. It was economic reality. A 200-acre corn operation in 1963 generated average gross revenue of $18,000 if yields hit 95 bushels per acre at $1.90 per bushel. Seed cost $640. Fertilizer cost $890. Fuel and maintenance ran $1,100. Hired labor cost $1.25 per hour. A harvest season required approximately 160 hours of equipment operation. Hiring help added $200 to operating costs. Most farmers worked alone to avoid that expense. Working alone meant no second person to hit the PTO shutoff when something went wrong. It meant no witness to describe what happened. It meant coroners reconstructing events from the position of the body and the condition of the machinery. John Deere published an operator manual with every Model 33 sold. Page 14 included a warning printed in bold text: keep hands and clothing away from rotating auger during operation. The warning appeared once. It did not describe the wrapping mechanism. It did not quantify reaction time. It did not explain that fabric contact led to arm amputation in under 2 seconds. The manual included 73 pages of maintenance specifications, lubrication schedules, and adjustment procedures. One sentence addressed the amputation hazard that John Deere's internal safety team had identified as the primary injury risk associated with the machine. The first documented fatality involving a John Deere forage harvester auger occurred on August 9th, 1959. Gerald Franklin Hooper died at 4:35 inches the afternoon while operating a Model 27 harvester outside Cherokee, Iowa. The coroner identified cause of death as exsanguination following traumatic arm amputation. Hooper was 38. He left a wife and 5 children. The farm carried $11,400 in debt. His widow sold the property 9 months later for $9,200. She moved to Des Moines and worked as a seamstress until her death in 1981. The Model 27 used the same auger design as the Model 33 that killed Robert Marsh 4 years later. John Deere received notification of Hooper's death in September 1959. The company sent a field investigator to examine the machine. The investigator's report, filed October 3rd, 1959, concluded that the death resulted from operator error and failure to follow published safety guidelines. Between August 1959 and March 1963, John Deere received documentation of 23 additional injuries involving auger contact on forage harvesters. 14 resulted in complete arm amputation. 6 resulted in partial amputation requiring surgical completion. 3 resulted in severe lacerations and permanent disability. The company maintained an internal injury database that recorded incident details, machine serial numbers, and investigator findings. Every incident report concluded with the same determination: operator error. Not one report recommended design modification. The standard company response included a letter to the equipment dealer reminding them to emphasize safety training during delivery and a suggestion that the dealer review proper operating procedures with the customer. No retrofits were offered, no recalls were issued, no design changes were implemented. The turning point came from inside the company. In July 1962, John Deere established a formal product safety engineering group in response to increasing insurance costs and a legal environment that was beginning to shift toward manufacturer liability. The group consisted of 4 engineers tasked with reviewing existing product lines and identifying injury hazards that could be mitigated through design modification. The team lead was Walter James Christensen, a mechanical engineer who had worked for John Deere since 1947. Christensen had a degree from Iowa State University and had spent his entire career designing agricultural equipment. He understood farming, he understood the machinery, he also understood the legal and financial risk that unaddressed safety hazards represented. Christensen's team reviewed injury data for every major product category John Deere manufactured: tractors, combines, planters, forage harvesters, balers, spreaders. They requested incident reports, insurance claims, and field investigator findings. They built a database that correlated injury type with specific machine components. The analysis took 3 months. On September 18, 1962, Christensen submitted a report to John Deere's product engineering director, Thomas Millard Hendricks. The report was 47 pages long. It identified 18 distinct injury patterns across the company's product line. It ranked them by severity, frequency, and estimated cost of design modification. The forage harvester auger mechanism ranked second. The report estimated that unguarded rotating augers had caused 31 documented severe injuries and 6 fatalities between 1,959 and 1,962. It projected that without design modification, the injury rate would continue at approximately 8 severe injuries per year. The report recommended immediate implementation of a protective shield that would prevent fabric contact with rotating flighting while still allowing crop material to enter the intake. The shield design was specific. Christensen proposed a curved metal guard extending from the top of the intake housing to a point 6 inches above the auger flighting. The guard would be constructed from 14-gauge steel. It would be hinged to allow access for maintenance. It would add approximately 18 pounds to the machine weight. Estimated manufacturing cost per unit was $14.70. Tooling and implementation costs were estimated at $38,000. Retrofit kits for machines already in service would cost $22.50 per unit to manufacture and could be installed by dealers in approximately 45 minutes. The total cost to retrofit the approximately 34,000 Model 33 and Model 34 harvesters in service was estimated at $847,000, including parts, shipping, and dealer labor reimbursement. Thomas Hendricks received the report on September 20th, 1962. He circulated it to 3 department heads: manufacturing, finance, and legal. Manufacturing responded first. Their memo, dated September 28th, stated that implementing the shield design would require retooling 2 production lines and would delay production of the 1963 model year by approximately 6 weeks. The delay would result in lost sales estimated at 1,200 units, representing $2.1 million in revenue. Finance responded on October 2nd. Their analysis noted that John Deere's agricultural equipment division had generated $127 million in revenue in 1961. Profit margin averaged 8.3%. The $847,000 retrofit cost represented approximately 8% of annual divisional profit. The memo concluded that the retrofit was financially feasible, but would materially impact annual performance metrics. Legal responded on October 9th with a different calculation. They had reviewed the injury database and identified 12 cases where lawsuits had been filed against John Deere or its dealers. 8 had been settled out of court for amounts ranging from $3,200 to $18,000. 4 were still pending. Total legal costs and settlements for Auger-related injuries between $1,959 and $1,962 had been $94,000. Legal projected that number would increase as liability standards evolved, but noted that current case law in agricultural equipment injury claims favored manufacturers when operator manuals included published warnings. Their recommendation was to enhance warning label language and to require dealers to document safety training at the point of sale. They did not recommend immediate design modification. Thomas Hendricks made his decision on October 23rd, 1962. The shield design would be incorporated into future models beginning with the 1964 production year. No retrofit program would be implemented for machines already in service. Enhanced warning labels would be developed and shipped to dealers for installation on existing inventory. The decision was documented in an internal memo filed October 24, 1962. Walter Christensen received a copy. His handwritten notes on that copy, preserved in company archives, included a single sentence: "This guarantees more deaths." Robert Marsh died 141 days after that decision was made. His death was not the last. On June 8, 1963, Donald Eugene Patterson lost his left arm to a Model 33 Auger outside Bloomington, Illinois. He survived. He was 29 years old. He had been married for 7 months. He never farmed again. On September 22, 1963, Martin Luther Hastings died when a Model 34 Auger pulled him into the cutting chamber near Fort Dodge, Iowa. He was 52. He had farmed the same 280 acres for 31 years. His funeral was attended by 340 people. On December 1st, 1963, Carl Raymond Booker lost his right arm to a Model 33 near Decatur, Illinois. He was 44. He continued farming one-armed for another 16 years before retiring in 1979. Each of these men operated machines that could have been retrofitted with the shield Walter Christensen had designed for $22.50 in parts. The 1964 model year began production in March 1964. The new Model 35 forage harvester included the protective shield as standard equipment. The shield was exactly as Christensen had specified: curved 14-gauge steel, hinged for maintenance access, mounted to the intake housing with 4 bolts. The shield prevented fabric from contacting the auger flighting during normal operation. It did not prevent intentional contact if an operator reached under the guard. It did not prevent contact if the guard was removed. It prevented the accidental contact that had caused 37 documented severe injuries in the preceding 5 years. Sales literature for the Model 35 mentioned the shield in a single sentence on page 11 of the product brochure: "New intake guard design improves operational safety." The brochure did not mention the injuries. It did not mention the deaths. It did not mention that the shield had been designed 2 years earlier. John Deere did not announce a retrofit program. Dealers were not instructed to contact customers who owned Model 33 or Model 34 machines. No recall was issued. The Shield design was available. Dealers could order retrofit kits. The kits were listed in parts catalogs beginning in April 1964. Part number AT 4492. Cost to dealers was $31.40. Suggested retail price was $48.50. Installation was not covered under warranty. Dealers had no incentive to promote installation. Customers had no knowledge that the Shield existed. Between April 1964 and December 1969, John Deere sold 847 retrofit kits for Model 33 and Model 34 machines. Approximately 34,000 machines remained in service. Less than 3% were retrofitted. The pattern continued. On March 19, 1965, Thomas Edwin Clark lost his right arm to a Model 33 auger near Peoria, Illinois. On July 4, 1966, James Michael Brennan died when a Model 34 auger pulled him into the intake housing near Waterloo, Iowa. On October 14, 1967, Richard Allen Foster lost his left arm to a Model 33 auger near Springfield, Illinois. Each death followed the same sequence: fabric contact, wrapping, pulling, amputation, or death. Each death occurred on a machine that could have been retrofitted with a Shield that cost $48.50 installed. Walter Christensen left John Deere in 1968. He took a position with the National Safety Council as a consultant on agricultural equipment design standards. He spent the next 12 years working to establish industry-wide safety requirements for rotating machinery. He never publicly criticized John Deere. He never testified against the company in litigation. He focused on forward-looking standards. In a 1973 interview with Farm Equipment magazine, he was asked whether manufacturers had a responsibility to retrofit existing equipment when safety improvements became available. His answer was careful. The question is not what is legally required. The question is what is possible. If you can prevent an injury for less than $50 and you choose not to, you have made a choice. You have decided that $50 is worth more than what might be prevented. That is a choice every manufacturer makes every day. The legal environment shifted in 1972. A case in Wisconsin established that manufacturers could be held liable for injuries caused by known hazards even if operator manuals included warnings. The plaintiff, Edward Norton Fisher, had lost both arms to an unguarded power takeoff shaft on a hay baler. The manufacturer argued that the manual included warnings about PTO contact. The court ruled that warnings were insufficient when cost-effective design modifications capable of preventing injury were available and not implemented. Fisher was awarded $340,000. The decision was upheld on appeal. Agricultural equipment manufacturers began reviewing their product lines for liability exposure. John Deere's legal department flagged forage harvester augers immediately. The internal safety report from 1962 was now discoverable evidence that the company had identified the hazard and possessed a viable design solution 10 years earlier. Between 1963 and 1972, John Deere had documented 19 additional severe injuries involving auger contact on Model 33 and Model 34 machines. 3 had resulted in death. 6 had resulted in litigation. Settlement costs had totaled $178,000. The Fisher decision changed the calculation. If a plaintiff could demonstrate that John Deere had designed a protective shield in 1962 and failed to retrofit existing machines, potential liability per case increased substantially. In January 1973, John Deere's Product Safety Engineering Group, now led by Douglas Frank Zimmerman, submitted a new recommendation. The company should issue a voluntary recall of all Model 33 and Model 34 forage harvesters and offer free installation of the Protective Shield retrofit kit. Estimated cost was $1.2 million, including parts, shipping, dealer labor, and customer notification. The recommendation was approved. On March 15, 1973, John Deere issued recall notice, PN 73004. The notice went to 22,000 registered owners of Model 33 and Model 34 machines. The notice described the shield as an enhanced safety feature and offered free installation at any John Deere dealer. The notice did not mention the 1,962 safety report. It did not mention the deaths. It did not use the word recall. It used the phrase voluntary safety upgrade program. Response was slow. Many of the machines were more than 10 years old. Owners had moved. Farms had been sold. Machines had been traded or sold to neighbors without registration transfer. Of the 22,000 notices mailed, approximately 8,400 customers responded and scheduled installation. The program remained open through December 1,975. Final participation was 9,240 retrofits completed. Approximately 13,000 Model 33 and Model 34 machines remained in service without shields. John Deere made no further attempt to contact owners. Production of machines using the unshielded auger design continued until 1979. The Model 33 remained in the product catalog through the 1978 model year as a budget option for small operations. The shielded version added $87 to the retail price. Customers could order the unshielded version and save money. John Deere discontinued the option in January 1979, not because of safety concerns, but because production volume no longer justified maintaining two configurations. The final Model 33 without a protective shield rolled off the assembly line on December 18, 1978. It was sold to a farm equipment dealer in southern Minnesota. That machine may still be in operation today. Injury data tells the outcome. Between 1,959 and 1,972. The period when unshielded Model 33 and Model 34 machines dominated the installed base, John Deere documented 58 severe injuries involving auger contact. Between 1,973 and 1,985, after the retrofit program and the shift to shielded designs, documented severe injuries dropped to 11. 8 of those 11 involved machines where the shield had been removed or damaged and not replaced. The shield reduced injury rates by approximately 85%. It did not eliminate injuries. Operators still reached under guards. Shields were still removed for cleaning and not reinstalled, but the pattern of accidental fabric contact leading to amputation effectively ended. The principle Walter Christensen identified in 1962 remains the foundation of modern agricultural equipment safety design. Rotating components must be guarded whenever contact can occur during normal operation. That principle is codified in ASAE Standard S 318. That 18, first published in 1977 and updated most recently in 2021. Every forage harvester sold in the United States today includes intake shields, interlock systems that prevent operation when guards are open, and emergency shutoff mechanisms within reach of the operator station. Those systems are descendants of the 14-gauge curved steel guard that Christensen designed in 1962. The modern shields are lighter, made from high-impact polymer instead of steel. The interlock systems are more sophisticated, using proximity sensors instead of mechanical switches. But the engineering principle is identical. Place a barrier between the operator and the rotating component. Make that barrier difficult to bypass. Make it part of normal operation rather than an add-on feature. Walter Christensen died on November 8, 1989, at his home in Ames, Iowa. He was 71 years old. His obituary in the Des Moines Register identified him as a retired safety engineer who had contributed to the development of agricultural equipment safety standards. It did not mention John Deere. It did not mention forage harvesters. It did not mention the lives his work saved or the lives that might have been saved if his recommendations had been implemented immediately. Attendance at his funeral was estimated at 90 people. He was buried at Ames Municipal Cemetery. His headstone lists his name, his dates, and no other inscription. The original shield prototype that Christensen built in 1962 is not preserved in any museum. It was fabricated in a John Deere test facility in Moline, Illinois. Installed on a development machine, tested, photographed, and then removed when the decision was made to delay implementation. The development machine was likely scrapped years ago. The shield itself, assuming it was not discarded, would have been 14-gauge steel, curved to a radius of approximately 9 inches. with 4 mounting holes drilled on 6-inch centers. It would have weighed 11 pounds. It would be indistinguishable today from thousands of similar guards manufactured between 1964 and 1979. If you live in the Midwest and you farm ground that was worked in the 1960s, there is a statistical chance that someone on a neighboring property was injured by a forage harvester auger. If you are operating equipment from that era, look at the intake housing. If you see a curved metal guard above the auger, that guard exists because Walter Christensen calculated that $22.50 in parts was a reasonable cost to prevent an amputation. If you do not see a guard, you are looking at the machine exactly as it was sold between 1959 and 1964, and exactly as 13,000 machines remained after John Deere's retrofit program ended. If you know someone who farmed during this period, ask them if they remember the injuries. Ask them if they knew that shields were available. Ask them if anyone ever told them the shield could be retrofitted. You will find that most did not know. The information was in parts catalogs. It was not in sales literature. It was not in service bulletins. It was available to anyone who knew to ask for part number. AT 4492. Almost nobody knew to ask. That gap between available and accessible is where most of the injuries occurred. Not because the technology to prevent them did not exist, because the people who needed it did not know it existed until after they were hurt. Let us know where you are farming. Let us know if you operated this equipment or if you knew someone who did. Leave the state or region in the comments. This history is not abstract. It happened to specific people in specific places. Some of those people are still alive. Some of them are watching this video. If you want to make sure stories like this are documented and preserved, subscribe. This is not entertainment. This is the record of what it cost to figure out what we know now.